Thank you for coming. It's wonderful to see so many people here. We've got the graduate program in design is actually sponsoring 2 lectures in a row this weekend next. Before I introduce Kristee, I want to remind you all that next week at 3 o'clock on Thursday, National Book Award winner Barry Lopez will be with us for an hour, and I encourage you to come and see him. He's a remarkable fellow. But tonight, it's my pleasure to introduce a remarkable woman, Kristee Rosendahl. We had fun thinking up the title for this talk, Dirty Design. Kristee has, for me, been an example of a person who's undergone enormous transformations in her life because she's been open to new possibilities. And I'm so pleased, and I treasure her as a friend and as a role model. The images that you see on the side of the screen here are mosaics that Kristee did. She has a life in art as well as a life in technology. And I guess her life in technology is interesting in that she was there co-founding the Human Interface Group at Apple Computer. And Kristee was at the Human Interface Group before Joy Mountford even, so that's an old story there. Here are some other of the places that she's worked. Plum was a wonderful idea. Maybe you'll touch on that tonight, collecting and sharing website. She was vice president of product development at Classroom Connect, and their customers were teachers and educators. She's done a boatload of consulting. These are only a few of the other companies that she's worked with. You can see that she was executive VP of marketing and chief creative officer at Creationware, and I'll let her tell you about the other stuff. Here's where it gets good for me, because I knew Kristee back in the day at Apple when we were working on the Guides project together, which was a project to use human-like agents and storytellers as ways of navigating the Encyclopedia Britannica, and that was big fun. So when it came time to get a company together around the research that Kristee and I and some others had been doing, and Christopher Ireland, those of you who are in the class know her, on Girls in Technology, we founded Purple Moon. Kristee was, first of all, director of the online product development side. The thing to notice about this is that this was before you had any kinds of plug-in template-like tools for building websites where you could share things or sell things. So we really had to roll our own. And Kristee imagined things like little virtual gifts that have popped up now on Facebook a long time before other people understood what they were. We were beating Disney.com for many months with this website. Girls would come on average once or twice a day and spend at least 30 minutes on the site collecting things, telling stories, doing interactive stuff with other girls in a closed and safe community. At the same time, Kristee was the director of product development for our merchandise component in that company. We felt that the games should spill some of their things out into the world as real objects. So Kristee designed these dolls. You can see here there were little pliable dolls for most of the characters. And Pat Tura is in the audience, someone who made that a reality with all the grisly parts of manufacturing and things. Kristee designed the secret stones. They showed up both virtually in the games and in the website, as well as actual stones with particular meanings that girls could make jewelry out of. This is something that happened after Purple Moon. You might recognize Christopher Ireland if you look closely, but we'll pass lightly over that. And you're lucky I didn't show some of our other outings. Yeah. This is a panorama taken from the porch of Kristee's 350-acre ranch in Sonoma County. And she has a lot to say about, I think, what the land has said to her and how she's responded to it. There's a way in which this talk is really related to Barry Lopez because they are both people who are responding to home ground in a way that's really productive and generative and almost shamanic for the rest of us. Here's some shots I took of Kristee's studio at the farm. I just love it. Kristee's partner works with wood, and he has all this wonderful wood around. He makes custom furniture in addition to taking care of 350 acres. He's a boy from Wyoming, and he's happy, happy, happy. Here's the sink. I thought it was neat. Beautiful old structures. This is an old barn, and here's a little owl living in one of the old barns. There was weird stuff, I'll just go ahead and say. The guy who owned the place before Kristee had a thing about antlers. These tomatoes, we ate them right off the vine, and I nearly fell down. They were so good. Here's Kristee broiling figs for breakfast. And here's Kristee at the top of a hike around this gorgeous 350-acre place that changed her life and changes the life of everybody who gets to visit it. So while she connects her computer, let's give a hearty welcome to Kristee Rosendahl.
So if I were looking for a school today to go to, I would be right here. You guys, this is amazing, and it's been a long time since I've been in an environment like this, and I'm very impressed and very kind of energized by it. I got the opportunity to spend time with some of Brenda's students individually before this, and it was just a real thrill to hear what they're thinking about, what they're struggling with, and I kind of assume that that represents a lot of what others of you in the audience are kind of also dealing with, and you are thinking big, and that's pretty cool, and you're taking on some pretty interesting problems. I learned some new words today, which I didn't know. Radical homemaking, I didn't know that one. I've known a little bit about urban homesteading because it kind of applies. Mass customization, that was interesting to me. But I also heard a lot of really great things that I'm going to try to respond to during this talk a little bit. I've divided the talk up into kind of 3 sections, so it's my job to kind of keep true to that. Some of you, I understand, were familiar with fork and shovel, and I want to talk a little bit about that only because there's a couple little features I just want to show you, and I want to talk about the history a little bit so you can see what it means to design products for people who don't normally spend time on the computer and whose behavior, both singularly and with each other, don't depend on digital communication at all. And by that I mean, the chefs and farmers. And then I'm going to spend a little bit of time showing you a tool that I think if I were someone ready to go out into the world today as a designer, I would want to know about. And so I want to give that to you because I think it's something that is happening right now in terms of working in very agile environments. And I'm a big proponent of it, and I think any designer working in the world today needs to understand what that means for them and the teams that they're working in, because we're going there. And then the third part is I'm going to show you pieces of a product which I have been building building since last November. I've been thinking about this product for 3 years. And I formed a company to build it, and I now have this little startup which we are going to do a very low-key beta launch in October. So we're pretty close to being there, but there's still a lot to do, and I've never showed this publicly, so I thought it would be fun to kind of show this a little bit to you guys, because a lot of the things that I heard today around, food and space and personal connection and even customization kind of gets wrapped into this. And so it's called Smart Gardener, and as Brenda said, it's something that came to me from living on a piece of property that you try to control these things and you don't really have control over them, but trying to actually turn out an organic garden and have a life and do all these things started to become like a really interesting design problem that I wanted to solve. So I took it on and then decided last November that if I don't get off my butt and do it, somebody else will. So I'll talk about that some more. right now I want to talk a little bit about Fork and Shovel. It's a nonprofit. It was started over a year ago. And basically it got started because a couple movers and shakers from Sonoma County and Healdsburg, some really top, restaurant people and some farmers got together and said, we really need to start helping support these local farmers getting their stuff into local restaurants, and then the public to understand what they're eating when they go into restaurants. And there's been a lot of discussion about this. I mean, this has come to the forefront a lot in terms of, what are we really eating? And when we walk into a restaurant, do we know where it comes from? Who grew it? And so there was this really, really great intention to build a product, and it was called Fork, and it is called Fork and Shovel. They started doing some stuff in Drupal. I was at an event, and I kind of was hearing about this thing on the side. I was pretty new in the neighborhood. I've been up there 6 years. This was a couple years ago. And I was really looking for ways to kind of become part of the hood, so to speak. And I heard that they were working on this, and so I kind of went up to a couple of people and said, how's that going? They said, it's not really going very well. I don't know. I don't think it looks very good, and I don't think they're going to use it, and it's really slow and everything. And I said, well, maybe I could help. Famous last words. So I got to get involved with these amazing farmers and chefs, and really that was my intention. I made no money off this, but I got to meet everybody in our community, and it was totally worth it. So I got what I wanted out of it, but I wanted to talk a little bit about the fact that they had all these requirements, and I sat down and I kind of, took them in, and then went off and built a pretty formidable prototype. I'm a big believer in prototypes. I don't care whether you do it rapidly, on paper, or whatever, it doesn't matter, but I actually use that as a design tool. To me, when I'm prototyping, I'm putting the pieces together, and it's making me think about stuff, and I'm very visual, and so I have to kind of construct it in the process of thinking about it. I can't just wireframe it almost. So I built something in a tool. I don't know if anyone uses this tool. It's called Freeway, and it's actually a great tool for people who don't want to do a lot of HTML. And I got it up, and I could make clicks and all sorts of things. And then I went off and I said, okay, now it's time. I got to sit in front of some, real farmers and real chefs and see if this works. And that was extremely helpful. I mean, these guys were on it. They gave me a lot of great feedback. We tweaked things, we changed things. It was just that perfect kind of like collaboration, and they were so excited, and we introduced this. So we launched it. I want to show you a couple pieces of it too, and then I'll tell you how it's doing. The thing when you go to Fork and Shovel right now is you can't, as a public, you can't really see it because it's designed for farmers and chefs to log into it. So I've logged in right now as Big Dream Diner just to show you what a chef would see were they to come in here. And we did this all in Ruby on Rails pretty quickly. And basically we give them a way to look at all the categories of products, and we worked a lot on the taxonomy and everything. So you can drill down here, or you can look at all the producers by name. This is really slow. What is that? Okay, let me just log in again, hold on. I don't know why that would be. Oops. Or you can look by producers by name. We didn't charge anything, by the way, to get on this because we wanted to encourage people to do that. So here's right now a long list of all the, sorry, I don't want to go so fast it makes you dizzy. But here's one way to search it. I mean, you can view all, or you can narrow down to, producers who start with a C. You can see all these guys on a map for instance, which we felt was really important because obviously locality for farmers bringing their stuff to chefs was pretty important to both parties. What always interests me in these things, so here's Bellwether, which some of you might know. Here's a company that knows how to market themselves. We made a really, and I'll show it to you, this little area here is for a little picture of your product, duh. And we made a really easy way for farmers or chefs to upload pictures. And it's interesting, to me at least, to see who took advantage of this and who didn't. I'm quite surprised how few people loaded pictures when you've got this venue that's going to sell your product. Why you wouldn't show a picture of it, I don't know. Anyway, here's Canvas. They're just all here. And it gives the information, and then people are putting in their goods to sell. The other thing we did was we set a notify button, because we weren't going to get into a big email thing. But basically, if I, as a chef, see something I like, there's a really quick way to message the farmer and get a dialogue going, which is what we were really trying to do. And so we have a small kind of communication ability here, and it's very exciting when you get an email. Each one of these producers has a profile. Let me just see. You can see, well, actually I want to show somebody else's, not ours, because we're not really, which lets them talk about who they are, and let's see this one, Bellwether, who they are, put their logo up, what they have to offer, and when they'll deliver, do they have a website, that kind of thing. So we've tried to kind of, give them as many tools as possible to use this product. Which, a lot of them did. And then if you're, I'm going to switch out now, and I'm just going to look at the, no, actually, I want to do one thing first. No, I don't want to spend too much time. I'm going to log in now as a farmer, just to show you that side of the world and how easy we needed to make this thing, because you basically have a group of people that spend a minimal amount of time on the computer, on the internet. And it turns out that we forgot to do some research about that because what we did is create a great product that's asking people to change their core behaviors. And it's really hard to do that. The last time I did that was working in education with teachers, in terms of getting them to change the way they do stuff. And we're talking about farmers and chefs who've had relationships for a long time with one another. They know, a lot of chefs know who they're buying from, they don't want to extend that. They've got their act together. And so all of a sudden, they're, trying to be online. And it really turns out that there is a group of early adopters in this case that took this on, whereas there's a huge swath that didn't. But what I'm noticing now is a lot of people are moving into the area and starting small family farms. And they're all over this because they get the technology. It's like the next generation is kind of coming in that's much more comfortable with this. So, maybe it will take off. We go to all sorts of farmers markets. We sell T-shirts. We have what are called jamathons, where we pair a chef up with the produce from a farmer, and they make something from it, and then we sell it. And I have to say, one of the big ways we've gotten exposure for this, because we didn't really have any marketing budget, is we have a really cool brand. And that has gotten us more traction. People love this fork and shovel thing. And we have T-shirts, and everybody kind of just gravitates towards it. So and it's got us a lot of press and a lot of lift, and of course we have a good story, and we're trying to do the right thing. But if you ever question that branding something is not an important thing, it is. And people look for that, and particularly if it's a good job, it's so compelling. People want to own a piece of that. So just putting that out from a design standpoint, those things turn out to be incredibly important. What I'm showing you here just quickly is how a farmer sees the world, and this is just our Big Dream Ranch work. And now I want to go add another thing to my inventory so that I can show it off. And this is really the trick here, because you've got farmers that aren't very savvy, so how do you do that quickly? So we created this little tool that works really fast, and it's like, how fast can you get them to do that? So we say, okay, I'm going to put tomatoes in, I'm going to, or vegetables, sorry. I'm going to do tomatoes, and I've got some red ones, and it turns out that came up. I'm going to put some Constelluto Genovese on. So I've got that done, and then I'm going to sell it by the case, and I have 4 cases, and I'm going to sell it for $24 a case. In this case, we are not certified organic, but we don't use any pesticides, so I'll put that down. I'm going to load my product shot, if I can find it quickly. Here we go. And I'm going to add some notes if I want, and then I'm just going to add it. So now that's viewable. So the whole goal there obviously was to make that as easy, fast, convenient as possible so that people would actually use it. And the people that are using it, they love this, and I just wish more people were using it. So let me just go one more place. We have a lot of outreach too, and I don't want to get into a lot of this, but it's really frustrating sometimes when you spend this much time and you do a good job, you try, and you do your testing, but somewhere there was a piece missing that we really should have been much more aware of, and that is, what are those current relationships that are fostered between chefs and farmers, and how could we have modeled that better? We do it with real live events, actually. We have some pretty cool events where all the farmers get up and they get 2 minutes to talk to all the chefs about what they have to sell. But there's something that, it's those personal connections when you get into an area where people have been doing business a certain way that start to, they're very meaningful. And so the idea that, you create a great product and they will come, it doesn't happen that way. So, we're struggling because these people have such limited time and they have so many other things they need to do. And if you're a farmer and you're out in the field all day, the last thing you're doing is coming home and, putting a lot of product on the site. So we're lucky to have who we have, and it's a great group. But, I would have done it differently, and I definitely would have had some marketing budget to get it out there a little bit more. We're keeping it up, and it is, it's thriving. I mean, not thriving, but it's doing its thing. But I think it would have just have been, we could have done something a little different to make sure that we address what their real pain points are. So that's really, all I wanted to say about that. And in fact, if there's any questions about that in real time, I'm happy to answer them, or I'll just move on. Yeah.
When you say that you have to talk to the farmers about necessarily why they don't like to load pictures of their products, have you done follow-up surveys with your users or anything to hear what it is about that particular feature that is appealing to them?
Yes, thank you. You're reminding me. It turns out not to be so much that. It actually turns out to be a business problem, and that is the farmers were reticent to put their stuff up here because most of them, the ones that we started with, are going to farmers markets, and farmers markets are so popular right now, and they're getting such premium prices, they didn't need to sell their stuff to the chefs. Now that'll start to change, and not every farmer can be at the farmer's market. I mean, there's a waiting list and everything. But it turns out that they were, it was a business problem. And to to the point, as I said before, these guys work really, really hard. And, just go spend a little time. I mean, we sell some of our produce to some of the nice restaurants in Healdsburg. And I'm out there for 3 or 4 hours picking 75 pounds of fava beans. I haul them in my truck. I love this, by the way. I love it. But it's not about making a living. And we take them down there, and I get $1 a pound. And, I've spent all season making it, fertilizing them, taking care of it, watering it, and I'm picking them. Then I got to get gas down there and, hand them to them. And that just isn't very much money for that much work. So I really, really appreciate what these people do to put food on our table now. Yeah. Yeah, I didn't do the brand, by the way. It was there before. It was done by the daughter of the woman who owns Barn Diva in Healdsburg. And Jill, who owns Barn Diva, she's such a wonderful retailer, an artist. She's a designer. And she just gets kind of what level of communication she wanted to have. And this was kind of quirky with the, old-fashioned symbology, but at the same time it was, she had these wonderful T-shirts made. So it was really about her vision for this, because she was one of the leaders. So she kind of knew what she wanted, and I think she was right on. It appealed to everyone. I mean, everybody at the farmers markets, I want that, because they also want to be a part of it. It's not just the T-shirt. It's like, this is a good thing you're doing, and I want to support it. So, did I miss anybody? Okay. What I wanted to say here, as I make this bizarre screen that you're looking at here, and I heard that some of you went to Pivotal Labs to learn about agile development. And I've done some projects with them, so I got to sit and watch the developers, do paired programming and everything. But this is a tool that they put out for free called Pivotal Tracker. To me, it is the best, most important tool I've used in a long time. And I'll talk about it in a second because it looks kind of wacky. But when I was working at Classroom Connect as VP of Product Development, there's a VP of Technology. He had his whole development team doing agile development. One day he said, Kristee, it would be so amazing and so more holistic, and to bring the designers and your group, and we had designers and user interface people, under the agile development so that they could actually interface with the development team a lot more easier. And I said, well, you need to tell me what this is. So we went to some conferences. We brought, Ward Cunningham in, who's the father of this. And, we took a day and he just kind of inundated me with what this means. And it sounded really appealing to me because I was so tired of sitting in rooms where project managers were spending a gazillion hours with Microsoft Project, all the way to the wall, and trying to keep everyone on track. And can you really know what the world looks like 6 months from now? I don't think so. And so a lot of it was just making a lot of paper and a lot of stuff going on. So agile development has been around for a while, but I think it's getting a lot of traction right now. And really, in a nutshell, I'm not going to spend much time on it because I think you go do the research. There's a lot of stuff out there. It's a way to do iterative development. It's very user-facing, and you do iterations of like 1 week, 2 weeks, or 3 weeks. So you have all these user-related stories, and as you can see here, we write them like users should see all the topics collapsed. User should be able to. It's all user-driven, and those are called stories. And all those stories live in this icebox here. And then we pull these over as we reprioritize what features or these stories need to happen every 2 weeks. That's because the world changes. That's because you might have a product that people are giving you feedback on, and they tell you, but I'd like it to do this. You get to steer the ship very quickly, agilely. You don't wait 6 months, a year to turn out a piece of software and then wait for someone to tell you whether they like it or not, and that is a huge risk. So this keeps you at a point where you and the client, it's very transparent. This is how I run my business, my project. I've never met my developer. We have a 1 meeting a week on the phone for 1 hour. And if any of you have been in corporations where you sit in hours and hours and hours of development meetings, this is beautiful. And there's hardly any documentation. It's very light. So basically, we prioritize, and this is the stuff he's working on this week. It has, anything that all our notes are here, so it's constantly documenting what I say, what he says, and all that stuff. It's got weighted points on it so that he's capable of doing 10 points a week. So does that make it easy for me as the client to, all I have to do is prioritize what are the 10 points worth of stuff that I think are most important for him to do that week. Anyway, that's just a skim, but I'm convinced that this is just a magic approach, and I'm so convinced that I'm going to run my whole company on it, and I actually run Big Dream Ranch on it, because we have so many things we need to be doing and I've tried the Excel spreadsheets, and I've tried all sorts of stuff. So I really, really encourage you to go learn more about this, because the teams that many of you might find yourself on will be practicing this. And the closer you as a designer can come into that process, the more control you will have over the outcome. Otherwise, you will do your stuff. If I'm talking about if you're doing digital product development here, and a lot of you aren't, and I realize that. But every time you do stuff and you have to hand it over a wall to someone else, you lose a lot of control over that, and the only way you stay in control is by being part of the party, and the party a lot of times happens in development, and you need to kind of stay really close to that, and I'm a big believer in that, and I've been really, really an advocate for teams, and I'm not even going to spend any time on this, because the world has changed and you guys are all getting this now, but I can't tell you, how many talks I've given on this for the last 25 years. The idea of melding designers and developers together. Oh, no. But it's how you get stuff done now. And and we're all working virtually and in person, it doesn't matter. But the more you start speaking a common language and taking some of the tools that they're using and melding that into your process, it does ask something different of you, because you don't get to design the whole thing, polish it, buff it, watch it sparkle, and then hand it off. You, as designers, have to start ahead of this process, get ahead, so that as they're developing, you're developing, but they're 2 weeks, 3 weeks, 4 weeks behind you. So it really does ask for a different way to kind of almost think about the products you're considering doing. So, any questions about that? Okay. So, let me put this up. This is a still of a comp of the home page. So the words aren't right, and the picture isn't right, and there's all sorts of things that aren't right. It's a placeholders, but let me tell you a little bit about Smart Gardener. So, like I said, a couple years ago, and we have all these big raised beds that we got on the property. So not every, but Saturday mornings I'd get up, wow, I'm gonna go out in the garden and grow stuff, woo! And, I need to know what to do. Okay. Take out, 4 different gardening books, get my Excel spreadsheet. I did all sorts of things that I try to, visualize all this stuff. oh, go on the computer and do research, because I know you're supposed to do something with the potatoes about now, or, picking this or whatever, and it's like, ugh. So at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, I emerge from my office. So I've just lost 4 hours trying to figure out what to do. I'm more confused than at 9 o'clock in the morning, and I've lost the opportunity to be out in my garden. And that's really the pain point for me. And it was like, wait a minute, something's wrong here, because I do not have the time to gather, learn, and, get all this information every weekend. I'm not going to take a class right now, blah, blah, blah. So it occurred to me, well, what happens if you had a product that knew what plants you were growing and could give you a to-do list based on those plants and send you that to-do list on your iPhone or in your email every week? So on Saturday morning when I get up, it's like, I know what to do. How cool. To optimize your garden. Doesn't mean we don't grow, good food a lot of the time, but it takes tending and it takes work if you really want, a lot of those vegetables and things to really thrive. So what I did, this was a couple years ago, I did a prototype again, and I met with a couple people whose opinions I really, respected. I did a deck, a PowerPoint, like, what's the problem? What's the solution? What are my competitors doing? I mean, I put the whole business, the business argument together, because I didn't know if I was raising money or whatever for this. And I kept thinking about it the whole time. Well, in the meantime, oops, got to make a living. So I ended up kind of putting it on the back burner, but I'd come back to it every once in a while. In the meantime, I went down and spent a year and a half commuting back and forth to Emeryville to work on a organic food product called Beautiful. If any of you buy Beautiful food in Laurel Heights, that was a vision. It was a great vision. It was bringing organic food to the masses, and it's now a retail store in Laurel Heights, so that's a whole nother story. In any case, in fall of last year, I said, I've worked so hard for so many other clients. I work with a lot of startups, and you have to wear a lot of hats, and it's very exciting, and I put my all into it to the point I get exhausted. I said, well, if I'm going to work this hard, how about if I do this for myself this time? And given all the everything that was starting to happen around the green movement, and people were starting to garden, including the president and his wife, and people were, the economy, and all of a sudden all this stuff was happening. It's like, if I don't turn out this product right now, somebody else will. So I basically put all my eggs in one basket and decided to find a developer and start building this thing. So that's what I've been doing. In the meantime, I've been lucky enough to have wonderful friends like Pat Tura, who's really been the maven behind the database that drives a lot of this, and another woman from Purple Moon, and a couple other people coming on. So it's a very small team. We're virtual. We live all over the Bay Area, putting this together. And we are going to do a very soft beta launch, probably about the middle of October. We're going to be invitation only, and we're going to launch it. The goal, which is to launch it publicly the first of the year after the holidays and when people are all starting to think about putting their gardens in. So we need to be buttoned up, and all the bugs need to be out of it and all that fun stuff. So I thought I would show you a little bit of this today and tell you kind of what the thinking was behind it, because it turns out the computer is really good at doing some of the heavy lifting that I don't know. How many of you have gardens? Anybody? Yeah, some. I don't know about you, but crop rotation and, companion planting and, when to fertilize and what to fertilize with, and just a whole, and when do you even plant this stuff was just, it's a lot. So it seemed like the computer could actually solve this problem. And what I realized is I'm starting to create products that actually encourage you to step away from the computer. and spend more time in your garden. So let me show you a little example of what that is. So we're working on the tour now and all that fun stuff. Let's see if I can reduce this down. It's a subscription model, so it means that you come on and you subscribe by the month for the product. It's also, we have a kind of household version and we have a community garden version, which lets everyone sign up for the same account and then take on different to-dos. So I have a garden here, and I just called Food for Two, 2010. Just to back up a minute before you, how much time do we have, by the way? Okay, perfect. Just to back up for a second, because this is actually kind of important, and this is an old version, but that's okay. When you sign up, we ask for your zip code, and how many people are in your household. And those are two very core pieces of information. The zip code, I found a way to take historical weather data that's collected in your zip code and actually model it so that we could visualize for you what your seasons were. When do you have warm seasons? When do you have cool seasons, cold seasons, hot seasons? How long are they? Once you know that, it really helps you plan a garden. So we're doing something really unique there that I don't think anybody else is doing in terms of what we're doing with the zip code. Most competitors, you put in the zip code and you get your frost dates, which we need to obviously have here too, because frost dates are very much part of gardening in terms of what the window is for your last frost date and your first frost date. What are you going to grow in there? So we do give you your frost dates, and we always give you an opportunity, as much as throughout this program, to customize this, because you can imagine the variables when someone's living at 2,000 feet, 4,000 feet, in the desert, in a mountain. There's a lot of stuff that's so specific. I mean, my neighbor next door has a different, microclimate. So I've got to be able to, customize this. So I put that in. And then there's a whole other section now that we do differently, which actually tells you what your seasons are. And then here's where you see, how many adults or kids in your in your household. That helps us do something very important too, which a lot of even books don't do, and that is, you go to grow stuff. How much stuff do you grow? And I hear this all the time. I grew what was I doing growing 3 zucchini plants? How stupid, and I've got zucchini out the wazoo. So this helps us because we know how many portions per plant, how many people it feeds. We can calculate that. So get my drift here a little bit, that I'm trying to kind of collect just enough information to give you a very customized solution for your garden. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go to the layout, and I actually this was another goal of mine. A lot of the products out there, they're all, they're great, but they're all kind of Bezier based, and it's like landscape architecture, and you've got to put all the stuff in, and I just thought, I just want to know how to get my garden's footprint on here so I can communicate it. So we came up with a way to kind of create like almost a click and drop. So when I have if I have a 12 by 4 bed, I can bring it in. It's hard to see on this screen, I know. I can bring it in. I can change its dimensions if I want to, 1 feet if I want. I can rotate it and then apply. Oh, I guess it didn't. Let me just change the height of that to like 8. Okay. So, okay, I'm done. If that's my garden, some are more complex than that, and we'll be building out some more templates. But this little window here lets you move that around, so you can actually have a 40-foot by 40-foot garden space right now. for your garden. And we break it into ground beds and raised beds. You know, some people have triangular areas there. We're going to bring in some more containers. Features is just certain garden features that you might have, like a tree or a fountain or something that you want in there, but you want to acknowledge it, but it's not part of the factoring of the plants. So I'm going to delete this because I just want to stay with a really simple garden. So this is basically, now I've laid out my garden. Okay, so that's it. And if it was my garden, I would be putting a lot of, this and that and all sorts of stuff, but that's fine for now. So now we give you a bunch of ways to get plants. We don't have recommended plants built yet, but the goal of that is to match your growing seasons with plants that have similar attributes, so that we customize a list for you of plants that you might be interested in, okay? Browsing plants is how you get to see a lot of plants to choose. Let me also, I think this would work if I just take bookmarks, and that would help. Okay, so this is browsing. I've got a couple things in here. So if I want to see beets and beetroot, I just click on that. It gives me the types, and I can look at that, or I can drill down into, just the rounded red varieties. Right now, we have over 400 plants databased with all their growing conditions and all their data. We partnered with a company called Peaceful Valley in Nevada City. I don't know if any of you know it. They're really famous for their catalog, and they do farm supply, and they also sell, it's all organics. They have lots of products and tools, and they sell a lot of different kinds of organic seeds, including their own branded Renee's Garden, Seeds of Change, and Tomato Fest. So they've allowed us, and they've never partnered with anybody before, and we came in and showed them the prototype, and by the end of the meeting, they were all up for it, which I was delighted, because their content is critical to this product. So right now, we've partnered with them. The goal is to partner with more, like the seed bank up in Petaluma, if any of you have been there. I'm dying to get them on, so that you as consumers have a lot of choices about who you buy your seeds for and from. So basically, I can scroll down here and look at all these different beets. And so we have a picture which we grab from the product itself. This is usually off the seed packet. We put in all this data. We have an enormous amount of data that we've put in behind the scenes that helps us do what I'll show you in a second. We say where it's from. At any time that you see a plant that you like, you can put it into your favorites, you can put it into your shopping list, and you can put it into your garden. So, and I can take that out at any time. So it's a really fast way to get things in and out. I mean, favorites is pretty explainable, and I'll talk about e-commerce in a second. So these are all beets, and there's just, like our tomatoes, we have a ton of tomatoes here. And what you can do, and so it tells you a little bit about what the conditions are, warm and hot. So you have some idea of what seasons it works for, whether it's annual or whatever. This little pot here tells you it'll work in a container. There'll be a lot of linking where when you roll over something, it'll give you not only a definition, but a more link to a huge online set of data about what does annual mean, or what does mulching mean, or how do you make your own compost. We have a huge part of that being built out, because we licensed 2 gardening books from a gentleman in Santa Cruz who's kind of self-publishes it. But I was in Copperfields one day, and I collect every one of these books, and opened it up, and I looked, and I said, you know what, this book is designed to be online. The way he had chunked the information, I was like, oh great, this is wonderful. Oh wow, he lives in Santa Cruz, wonderful, let's try to get it. So we have this information here. Now at any time, I want to drill down on a particular plant anywhere in the database, because this thing you see here is what I'd call the plant card. Basically, for this single plant, we have a plant guide, which gives you all the information that you need to really understand that plant in some pretty deep depth. That's good. So I've got the basics there. I've got growing options if we have any. So here you can do cool climate growing, cuttings, early crops. We give you the ability to look at related plants, which might help you pick some other things. We're still filling in the database there. And then we tell you about prep. Here's the soil preference for it. Here's your soil preparation, putting compost in 2 inches in the top 10 inches of your soil at the beginning. And we give you a needs list, like we kind of roll all this up and tell you what you need if you need, because you're going to go to the nursery or whatever and get some of this stuff. I won't go through all of these, but you can start to see here where we break it down. If you need to start it indoors, we tell you 2 weeks. I mean, this is your basic information. And then we have this little construct here, this little model where anytime you see the plus, you can open up a piece of information and get more information. And the goal there was not to kind of overwhelm people and only let them drill down when they needed to. I think that's just, how much information do you want at one time? And that's up to you. So that's why we kind of came up with this thing that lets you, like this one, there's a lot of information here. So it lets you be in control of how much information that you want. And then here in care, I'll just show a little bit about that because you'll see it again. Here's, what you basically have to know about protecting if there's frost, side dressing when it starts to flower, watering up to early fruit set, side dressing at early. So all of this stuff, these are all to-dos basically. And then we go into some description of that. So we are exposing them here per plant. Now I'll show you at some point what it means to see your garden done like this. Yeah. Okay, so let me just quickly go show you. Once you pick all your plants, you go to a tool which then should deliver. So I can't see my little, it will come up. So what it does is it goes out and it starts to take all the plants that you wanted to plant, and it gives you a smart plan. And that's based on crop rotation, facing north, companion planting, I'm trying to think how many you need as a family, blah, blah, blah. And then you can adjust that with the square foot tool, which lets you, up the number of plants here, either by square foot or number of plants. So if you want to, make that different for you, that's fine. And then we also give you the ability, it's called a DIY garden. We keep the smart garden the way it is, and then we say, okay, this one, if you need to move stuff around, go for it. And we're doing this without Flash, by the way, and we're going to change this pop-up. But this lets you customize it even more. So you've always got the model, but then you've got the ability to customize it. So what are we going to do? We're going to archive this for you. So when you come back next year, you could copy this same thing. You can copy your layout. You can copy your plants and get going. What I want to just show you really quickly is what happens when you now have this garden. Every time you log into this program, once you've set up your garden, that's what you have to do for that week. So it turns out that this week of October 3rd, I have got to plant the winter crop of my beets, and let's see, it says a little bit about that. Now there's a bug here, so I see fall crop too. But it looks like I've got a lot of planting to do this week. Garlic, mustard greens, and onions, but it tells me everything I need to do. I can move ahead and see what I need to do next week. So there's a bug too. But you get the idea. That the whole point is now that we've put enough information in here that you now have the benefit of knowing what you need to do every week. We'll send you an email, we'll send it to you on the iPhone, and off you go. You can see this as a month at a glance. So if you need to kind of see an overview, there's a lot of soil preparation happening in October if you're going to do a fall garden and winter garden. And then you've got a lot of planting to do as well. And we let you, hold on. Okay, sorry. And we also give you, there's a lot of views on these things, and this isn't completely built out yet, but you can also choose to see a view on your garden, lots of different views of your garden. These will be different colors according to when you start indoors, plant out, care, and harvest. So if you're actually even browsing for plants, you can start to look at them visually as when they start, so you can get a feel for like, oh, well, these plants I can kind of grow together, and these plants, it's not going to happen until, the fall. So we give you a lot of different views there. This is the whole section we're building out about help. And then just two more things here. This is a mock-up. What we're doing is every time you do something in your garden that, one of these tasks, and you click on to do, basically that marks a date, which I can change at any time, but it basically says I've done it. Well, now instead of having to fill that out in a paper or even some of the digital journals I've seen, which are horrible, we basically start tracking that automatically for you and give you start to build your journal automatically, and it says when you did those tasks. So without even adding anything to your journal, it's archiving the experience and the activities you did that year. On top of that, however, is that this turns out to be a really dynamic journal, and that is I can open up black cherry tomatoes, let's say, and even if I haven't grown any of this yet, I get to not only put my notes and everything, but I will see who anyone else in the network who has experience and wanted to leave pictures or notes about black cherry. So all of a sudden I've got all this great information at my fingertips that I get usually on forums trying to pick through, I don't care if you grow potatoes in Vermont. I need people who grow in similar conditions, which is why we have a way for you to choose here whether I want to see all shared notes, only shared notes with similar growing conditions, or only my notes. So this is what I would call a very dynamic journal that starts to kind of be an ongoing living document for your garden, as well as anything that you add helps other people grow. We will have a huge network area, a group area, but that comes a little later when we get enough people. And what I'm really, really focused on is being different from a lot of these gardening forums. I want to hook you up with people who have similar growing conditions, because that's who you care about talking to about your experiences. And then lastly, everything that you've put in your shopping list, and this is also something, I don't know, for you gardeners, we all get these great catalogs and we sift through them, or we're online, and it's like, by the time you're done, you've got about 5 different places you want to order stuff, and it's like a packet of seeds here and a packet of seeds there and a couple things there, and you go, am I really going to walk through am I really going to sit and go through 5 sites now and fill in all that information just to buy a packet of seeds? No, I don't think you are. I won't. So basically what we've done is we've cut a deal so that we can actually roll up everything that you want. And it can be from Peaceful Valley, it can be from Heritage Seeds, whatever. And we'll show it to you here. And then if you're fine with that, when you click on this buy button, basically what we do with your permission is we send all the information, not your credit card, but all your information over to Peaceful Valley, and it builds a shopping cart so that you don't have to refill in any of that stuff, and they manage the sale. They're really good at that. I don't want to be in e-commerce. We get a cut of the sale, but they do all the fulfillment, the customer support, and everything, and you get everything you want with one click instead of all this other stuff. So that's kind of a new way of, trying to really create, a complete experience from trying to figure out what to grow to actually buying it and then being able to grow it and be happy with it. And we're going to have a lot about cooking and gardening, because that's really what you're doing with food, organic vegetable gardening. You're growing your food. So how does that connect to, what you want to now do with that stuff? And do we have a place where you can share produce with local people that are also doing the same thing? So that's it.
Those slides, please. We've got about 10 minutes for
Okay.
questions.
Okay.
I just want to say that I'm starving.
So that means we need to keep to the schedule.
Yes.
That's right. So questions, comments? You want it? Yeah.
How did you decide to go on weekdays?
Yes, I was.
So this thing could really grow in a lot of directions.
Mm-hmm.
Suck up a lot of content. And the business web gets to be interesting. So can you talk a little bit about your thoughts and how you develop your business model?
Oh, okay.
I think I mentioned earlier that, we are going to do a very quiet beta launch. I think the days of doing a big fancy launch are gone for a lot of small projects. It's not worth the money and the time. And we want to get feedback so that we do that. Then we will launch. Like I said, we're doing a subscription-based model. So you'll go online and sign up. It'll be, right now we're modeling at $5 a month for households and $12 a month for community garden. And we've run the numbers both, including that subscription. We've made it so that we can hook in an advertising module here and have advertisement. You just don't, there's a column that's empty there, but that would do that. And now we can do it. We can do local kind of, geo-specific, targeted, like my local nursery will show up on my screen, which is going to be really, cool. They have all that, and that would make sense. And like I said, when we do the e-commerce, we get a percentage of that sale. So we're covering about 3 different models there because you have to. And we just kind of keep playing with numbers in terms of, how fast we think we can get traction. These days, at least from what I hear, is there are angel investors out there, and I will go visit some of them, but I'd rather actually continue to work on the product for a while. But what I understand about getting investment, too, is that they don't really want to see this until I can show them that we have users that are signed up and that are, sticking around. And then it's going to be a lot easier to get some additional money if we need it, and I would love not to need it. It's just, it's just a personal thing right now that I would love to, but how long can I keep, funding this? So.
But, tangential question. Any research into real-time foods around weather and insect stuff that could really screw up?
Absolutely, and you're right on. All that stuff, we've thought about it, but again,
when you develop a product, you have to make those very, very uncomfortable, decisions, how much. And it's about how much fidelity you need to sell a product at the beginning. I actually think we've gone farther than we probably needed to, but that's okay because I think our audience actually demands that. I don't think we're talking about necessarily an early adopter audience that's going to stick around while we refine this as much. I think we have to come out of the gate pretty sure of what we're doing. So there are a lot of things and a lot of tools now to run, all sorts of communities and get real-time feeds that are just extraordinary. And, soil tests now that you can look online and they have a lot of maps that are so distinct that you can like pretty much put your address in and it will tell you the kind of soil you have. That's pretty cool. So we're all ready to hook all that stuff up, but you know.
A virtual version of a garden, you mean? You mean like virtual?
I don't know. Probably not right away, but I do think this is actually kind of an interesting product for schools, because I know a lot of schools are running community gardens.
You said you learned a lot from Fork and Shovel, and I'm just wondering, I mean, it seems a little like you built this for yourself, definitely, and I'm wondering about kind of the other users and how, you know, if you've targeted specific user groups and involved them or are planning to do anything.
Yes.
Because I did this 3 years ago, I've had all sorts of opportunities, because I'm surrounded by all sorts of smart people, to put the prototype in front of them. So I've gotten an enormous amount of feedback. I also do very, well, Pat knows this better than anyone. I will design something like a page that, like when I was doing the to-dos, what does that look like? I send that out to 5 people that night who I think will give me their honest opinion, and they do. And I literally I'll design something, I'll finish it, I'll send it out that night, and by the next morning, I'll have feedback that's meaningful to me, and it absolutely impacts the way I design it. Because I get so in the weeds with some of this stuff that I need people to say, wait a minute, this is way too complicated, and it pulls me back. So I've done that. We did a lot of research. There was some great research out there about who's gardening, why, and what that I pulled. Our main target audience, because we have a lot of audiences, but I will say that our main target audience is female, for a variety of reasons, but female probably in the early 30s to through the 50s, who are, I know, well, whatever. It's actually true. I mean, I'm realizing that a lot of people start gardening when all their kids go away, so what are we talking about here? But a lot of moms and families are I shouldn't say that. I don't like to say that. Actually, families. Because I know a lot of guys that like to garden and families that like to garden and who think it's very important to get their kids involved and understand where their food comes from. And there's a lot of urban gardeners here that are trying to do that, even if it's with one pot on a patio. And we are addressing that. That's why we went into the container stuff so heavily, and we're going to continue to do that, as well as out in the suburbs. So we did the research. We did, and we worked with a woman to really narrow, get our mission statement, get our branding, really understand who we had to design this for, although I think it's much broader than that. It's good to kind of make sure that you kind of know who that is. Does that answer your question? Okay.
So it sounds like you started with a lot of secondary and quantitative information that you were getting, statistical information and stuff.
Yeah.
And now you're doing this sort of agile prototyping process.
Right.
That's really interesting. I've never thought of applying the agile method to a prototyping scenario.
Yeah. Because the more I
work on that prototype and refine that, it's like remodeling or building a house. You do not want to go to the architect with a half-assed thought. You want to kind of have yourself buttoned up. You've thought through some ideas. And for me, getting a developer to help, he needs to see what this is. So all of a sudden, his time to give me a bid is reduced, because he doesn't have to ask me 40 million questions for the next 4 weeks. He's like, okay, I get this, what about this? And it just goes so much more smoothly. And then I have a spec. That's my spec. And we keep going back to it every time. So I'm not documenting it with, I can't do that. I can't write the spec. I got to show the spec. So, yeah.
Do you use any browser-based things for prototyping before involving the developer?
Oh yeah,
I've used Graphle. Fireworks you don't have to put on the web, but you can. I've used Graphle a lot. I think it's a really easy thing. I've tried one of the new tools that's out. I can't remember. It's got a funky name. That's an online kind of storyboarding wireframe thing. And I tried it enough to be able to write them back with some feedback because I didn't feel like it was where it needed to be for me to kind of commit to it. So, and I don't use Photoshop a lot. I mean, I use it, no, I don't use it. I use Fireworks a lot now from kind of the beginning, because it's kind of got the best of, you know, Illustrator and Photoshop and all those things. So and the people that are doing the development, I mean, doing the build for the HTML, that's what they accept. We go through an online company that basically, you know, you send your design to your documents to them and they just bid it out and they build it for you, and a couple days later it comes back. You correct it and the front end is done. I mean, over time, we send them batches. But I don't know who's doing it. They could be I don't know, they could be anywhere. But it's a really different model. There's so many tools for starting businesses, for being in business now. It's remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it would be really interesting to find out how much money you've saved by growing your own food and being able to share that, for example, on Facebook, and that might get more people interested in doing this. And have you also thought about recipe sharing around the, you know, what's harvesting right now?
Yes. Yes and yes. No, right on. The whole thing about, well, first of all, the recipes, we are going to include recipes, but I don't want to be a recipe site, but I want to be really targeted to things like when you have a lot of harvest, you start looking for, like, what do I do with 4 million carrots, you know? So actually Pat here, she's going to be writing a lot. She's the one that comes up to the ranch and does magic with all the stuff that we grow. So she's going to be really involved in writing and she also has a fantastic garden. So she understands that story from garden to, you know, plate, from plot to plate, or whatever you want to call it. And so we're going to tie that in with the blog a lot and talk about, like, gardening seasonally, but also cooking seasonally with the stuff that you're growing. And she's going to help us do that really well, because that's got to be part of it. And then there was another part I've lost. Oh, yeah. So that we would need to be able to grab a feed from something local food prices to make that at all realistic. But I have seen some numbers online where people do that estimate, and it's cool. It's like $600, $700 a year. You know, you can. I mean, I wouldn't even buy a tomato in a store anymore once you grow them, you know. Yeah.
I'm really curious about thinking back to the fork and shovel, and how you said you were having trouble getting farmers to participate. And I totally understand the reasons why. I'm wondering about the restaurateurs. Is there sufficient demand on the other side of it? Are they more excited about it than the farmers?
You know, this is the thing. It really depends. Here's the problem there that I've heard, and that is a lot of restaurant owners do not want their chefs spending a lot of time online. It's a time sink as far as they're concerned. You know, their chefs have set up their relationships. The truck comes, you know, the people come, drop stuff off, and to have their chef spending his time kind of moving through, trying to find stuff, some people will tolerate that, and I've heard some owners of restaurants that really aren't going to encourage that. And yet, I've also heard that a lot of chefs had made new connections from seeing produce from people they had no idea, you know, grew it. So it works both ways. It's a really, you know, it's such an individual community. I mean, they're all cowboys in a way. You know, chefs want their own control over their kitchens and what they grow, you know, what they have and what they're cooking, and farmers have their own thing. I will say I learned something, though. I didn't realize how much farmers actually really like coming to farmers market, and now I totally get it. I wondered, why would you do that after you've spent all week growing this stuff? Why did you do that? Because there is nothing like showing off the stuff you grew and watching people enjoy it and buy it and take it away. That's to me, like when I can hand someone a tomato that I grew, that makes it all like totally worthwhile. So I totally get that that's where they get their energy, because they get people like going, oh my God, this is so good. Well, I'd want to hear that too. Yeah. Yeah.
One more.
My question is, I understand that like local growing and gardening and organic gardening is very big in Northern California. And you said that farmers markets are in high demand. Is that throughout the country, or is that just within this area? And how popular do you think that's going to go in the future throughout the country?
Well, my research, because I've kind of been obviously trying to tells me that this is a countrywide thing. It's been particularly precipitated by the economy in some ways, and the president, growing their own garden. Slow food has done an enormous amount. I would say like any movement, it usually starts, in places like Northern California first, and it's been here for a while, and then kind of moves up the coast in that way. And then also there's a huge food movement. It's the same thing happening on the East Coast. I mean, what's happening in Brooklyn, is amazing. And the kind of people that are, the blogs that are coming out, the food blogs, the photographs people are taking of their food, but also there's a lot of people that have had gardens for a long time. We just didn't know it. I mean, it wasn't a cool thing for a while. And now I think it's, people are hiring people to put in designer organic gardens in the city. I don't want to touch it, but I want it. It's you come pick it and it looks marvelous, but I have it. I mean, there's this prestige to it now. I think farmers have prestige now that they didn't have. But everything I see is it's been and continues to be and will continue to be. It's everybody kind of revisiting what's important. So, okay.
Thank you, Kristee.
Thank you. Thanks.